Hello, welcome to the A.C.E Football Academy. Today I'm joined with Coach Hamilton. I am Coach Dunham. Today we're going to kind of finally wrap up our recruiting discussions. We're going to give our really overall tips, information, things that all of our guests have said, the college coaches, the players, some of our side guests that have jobs that help people get recruited. And we're just going to give our final wrap-up of the recruiting side of this.
Yeah, as we went back and started, re-listen to the episodes and things like that, we kind of found some common themes, whether it was a coach or a player or a recruiting analysis or recruiting agent. So we've kind of found some common themes, and that's what we're going to focus on in this episode.
Absolutely. So we've got a few bullet points we're going to go down on. Coach Hamilton, won't you start us off here? What's our number one thing for kids to be paying attention to when they go into the recruiting process?
The biggest thing in this process, and I think Coach Tripp really pushed it even more than maybe I thought was just the communication. Just making sure everything is communicated. As a player, you got to start putting yourself out there as soon as you think that college soccer might be a thing for you. You have to send the emails knowing that you're not going to get responses sometimes. But also, hey, thanks for coming. Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching me play. Sending those. I think Coach Tripp mentioned several times, send me one line email that says, hey, thanks for coming. But just keeping that communication constant with the coaches is so important.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that, the emails, the conversations, but the nonverbal communication. Yeah. One thing Coach Rogers discussed is when you're doing Zoom calls, when you're on a campus visit, or you're there at an ID camp, he's watching what you're doing when you're not speaking. Are you on your phone? Right. Are you staring off into space in a Zoom call? Are you carrying the conversation? Do you seem bored? The nonverbal is just as important as everything that's going on there.
Yeah, and something just to kind of wrap up that communication portion of it, I thought was real interesting. It's something that I never thought about before, but just even after the process is over, and you commit to the University of Kentucky, but you've been recruited by North Carolina and these other places, but reaching out to those coaches that you've decided not to commit to and saying, hey, I appreciate all you've done for me on this process, but I've decided to go this way. Because you never know what's going to happen. You never know when, after your freshman year, you're going to decide to transfer. Or even before that happens, you have a change of heart. But just not severing those ties with these coaches simply because you don't communicate with them.
It's the same thing when you have your career. You may move jobs. Don't burn those bridges. Right. You may be coming back to that manager that you're turning down. Be professional, respectful, be mature about it. It makes a difference throughout your entire life. So our next bullet point here is take those visits. It doesn't need to be an official visit every time. I think Coach Rogers said you get 5 total. So if there are schools that are within an hour of you, even if you're not looking towards them for your career, just go and do a visit. Just get used to that process of meeting people, having conversations, having questions, doing your homework. So when you go to those places that you have on your top 3, top 5, you're way more prepared for those.
Yeah, and I love that, doing your homework. When you go to these visits, you need to have questions ready. You need to have things kind of planned out for yourself to help you make that decision. Whether it be, hey, I need to get a player one-on-one and ask them these 2 questions about coach. Or I need to get a coach in a small group and say, hey, what's a typical training day look like? Or what's a typical match day look like? Just kind of knowing those things, doing your homework, but absolutely take those visits, even if they're unofficial, even if they're to schools that you may not be really looking at, but just, giving yourselves a lot of options. Something that Coach Tripp mentioned that I thought was really interesting is to take those trips early on to the colleges around you, because it kind of gets you in a groove of, okay, here's what this is going to be like. And then that can help on down the road when you start to take these official visits or even the unofficial visits, kind of planning out your trip, mapping out your trip. So just lots of visits, as many as you can go on, and really as often as possible.
Well, the other side of that is you're going there to go to school. You're looking at majors, and you may have an idea in your head of what you're expecting or what you would like to have on a campus. Maybe you take that visit and say, oh, wow, they have this. I didn't realize that. You may be surprised. The ones that are on your list may end up becoming on your list because, one, they're right near your house, but they have things that you want on your checked off list of things you want for the college, for the program, whatever it may be. But you may be surprised. So take as many visits as you can, unofficial. Sometimes you don't even need to contact those coaches. Just go to the school. They always offer tours. Yeah, always take advantage any chance you can get.
And that kind of leads in kind of what you wrapped up with there. It kind of leads into our last bullet point, and that is just, yes, you're going to play soccer, but you're choosing a school for everything else. You've already mentioned the major thing. You make sure the school has the program that you're interested in. Mm-hmm. Make sure that school will allow you to do the program and play the sport.
That's a huge one right there.
I know, like, especially on the women's side, there is a lot of schools who won't allow you to major in nursing and play soccer. Mm-hmm. They just, sorry, we don't do it. It's too much work on the athlete.
Right.
So just kind of knowing those things, yes, you're going to play soccer, but everything else, honestly, is probably more important because eventually soccer is going to end and you're going to have something to fall back on.
Absolutely. And to go back on what you said there about making sure the program that you want to get into, that coach is okay with it. I know of a coach who have told a player who was in a medical field saying, if you're going to be in this program, you need to drop off my team.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she switched after the fact. I don't recall the whole situation, but you're adults and you're going to have adult conversations. And this is those coaches' lives. If they're giving you a scholarship, they're depending on you, not just to play, but to be part of a winning program. And so, again, communication, visits, choosing everything, your major, the location, the size, and coming down to our last bullet point, it all comes down to the right fit.
Yeah.
It all has to come around to the right fit that fits you. Coach Hamilton may want to go somewhere to start right away. I might want to go somewhere because I need an engineering degree. Maybe that's more important to me. So each person is going to be different. So if you're going around talking to your friends, it's okay to get different ideas, but it all comes down to what your perspective is. What is on your checklist of things that you require?
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Before you even start this process, I think it would be a good idea. And as you said, sit down with a couple friends, your closest buddies. Sit down with mom and dad. They definitely need to be involved in this process, or whoever's at home with you. But come up with 4 or 5 non-negotiables. Hey, these are the things that I have to have in order to commit to this program. And those things may change, from freshman year to junior year, and that's okay. But just to have those things prior to each visit so you know ahead of time what you're looking for. And again, that goes back to kind of doing your homework and making sure that you're gathering enough information to make a good, intelligent decision for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of great information here. We want to give a huge thanks to the guests who've been a part of this recruiting series. Olivia Swafford, Rachel Hughes, Coach Tripp, of course, Erica Suter, Don Williams, and your buddy, John
Gordon.
John Gordon, thank you.
Yes.
But a huge thank to all of them. Each one provided their own perspective, but everybody gave us some inside scoop of what they dealt with, their own perspective, and providing great information for each person saying, we are different each way, but like we did here, there are certain things that you've got to start paying attention to.
Yeah, and, again, thanks to all those people. And, we kind of had connections with the players. But for guys like Coach Tripp and Erica and Don to come on, really awesome of them. This was kind of the first thing that we dove into when we started this podcast.
Right.
So the fact that they didn't laugh in our faces and say, you got to be kidding me, or who are you? Everybody was immediately, yeah, we're on, let's set it up. So again, a huge thank you to those people.
Absolutely. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit more about college in general. We talk a lot about Division I, Division II, NAIA. What does that really mean?
Right.
So coming up, we're going to provide some information that details what you're looking for, what that means, what kind of scholarships that can offer, roster size. And when we were looking at it, I was a little surprised on some of the information. So stay tuned. This is the ACE Football Academy. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the second half of our recruiting final here on the ACE Football Academy. Over this whole series, we talked a lot about Division I stuff and looking at Division II and III, NAIA. But today we're going to give more details about what that really means. Numbers, offers that they're allowed to give, the different talent levels, what they offer. So a little more details about these groups that even you and I weren't aware of before we did this information.
I think that's really important too, because you heard Coach Tripp, you heard Coach Don, you heard Erica Suter. All of them, at some point or another, in some way or another, hinted at that myth, that misconception that athletes think it's Division I or bust.
Right.
And we're going to take some time over the next 15 minutes or so and kind of hopefully help to make those divisions, what all that means, what all goes into that, a little clearer for you. So let's dive right in.
Absolutely. So we're going to split this into a men's programs and women's program. I'll do the men's if you want to take care of the women's here. So look at the men's programs.
Before you do that, let's so we're going to be talking about 5 different divisions here. Starts at Division I.
Right.
Then you have Division II, Division III. Then we get into what is called the NAIA. And then we get into junior colleges or the JUCO ranks. And that is the same for both men's and women's.
Absolutely.
A little bit later on, as we talk about some of the programs, you'll hear us mention the same men's program as the women's program, because usually what you see is if one of them is good, the other one's usually pretty solid as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the currently available men's programs throughout the country. So in Division I, we have just over 200 programs. Division II, again, just over 200 programs there. Division III, there's over 400 men's programs, which I was not expecting that at all. NAIA, looking about 180, and then junior college, about 217. Altogether, around 1,225 men's programs throughout the country. What's the women's side look like?
Yeah, very similar, maybe even a little better numbers-wise. Division I, looking at 330, roughly 330. Division II is about 265. And then, again, you get to that Division III number. Almost 450 available programs at the Division III level. NAIA, it drops to 180, and then in JUCO ranks, it is 181 for just a program under 1,400 for the total there. So 1,399 total programs that are playing women's soccer at the college level.
Very interesting. And just like we just mentioned, Division III doubling the amount of programs for the men's and women's. It's something that we've discussed. There's so many opportunities there.
Yeah.
It's worth looking into. The next session we're going to look at here is the max scholarships per school that each team is allowed to offer to bring in their recruits. So in Division I, they're allowed 9.9 total scholarships.
On the men's side.
On the men's side. Now, that's 9.9 full ride. They can break that down into half scholarships, quarter scholarships, to bring in more scholarship players. Division II, we're looking at 9. Division III, no scholarships are allowed in Division III. That's very interesting to pay attention to, and that may play into the doubled amount of programs there. And NAIA, they're allowed 12 scholarships. In junior college, 18, which is a very large number. That's almost an entire roster there. Yeah. So very interesting there. What's our look on the women's side?
For the NAIA and JUCO ranks, it is the same. It is 12 for NAIA, 18 for JUCO, and then again, as you mentioned with Division III, no athletic scholarships are allowed at Division III. So there are
and I'm glad you brought that up. Athletic scholarships, very important there.
None there in Division III. Division I and Division II are a little higher on the women's side than they are on the men's. Division II, again, that 9.9. Again, it can be broken up across several different players if need to be.
At Division One, though, they offer 14 max scholarships. So you think a starting 11, and then your top three, your next three players. So real interesting there that number in Division One is much higher. I think that might have something to do with the number of Division One programs being a little higher. So you are gonna have more players involved, more athletes getting to that Division One rank on the women's side of things than you do on the men's.
Well, I think a lot of that plays into men's football taking a lot of scholarships away from other men's programs. So here you see women's being available a lot more to make up for that football side and the men's side. So something to look at there. A lot of positives for the women's side, but many opportunities here. It all depends on the school and how they feel like breaking it up. Other thing we looked at here is the average roster size per division. And they can be kind of slimmer down the road, but this gives you an idea of openings available per school throughout each division. So divisions 1, 2, and 3 and NAIA, you're looking at about 30 average roster size. They can have a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depends on what the recruiting season was. And then junior college, you're looking at 19. So not a huge roster. They're definitely not going to have, a practice squad. It's going to be that player roster, going to games, and that's it. What's the women's side looking like? Oh, I'm sorry. Going back to that. So overall, about 35,500 openings in all of men's soccer programs in the United States.
Yeah, and on the women's side, again, a little bit higher with that overall number being about 39,100 total players on the women's side in collegiate soccer. Although, that being said, the Division I and the Division II roster size are a little lower with 28 and 27 players respectively. And then the Division III is 25, NAIA is 25, and then JUCO, as you mentioned, is very similar to the men's side where it is 19 as well. Interesting take here that you're looking at the Division I level, half of those rosters is going to be on scholarship. You have an average roster size of 28, you have 14 max scholarships. Half of that roster is going to be on scholarship, and that's if they just give 14 to one player. Again, you're probably looking at 18, 19, 20 of those players having some sort of scholarship to play there.
Absolutely. And it's kind of a game that the head coaches have to play. You don't want to give one class more scholarships.
Right.
You got to break that out through your freshman through senior classes to keep the kids coming back year after year. So it's a bit of a game they got to play. So overall in the United States, between the men's and women's programs, you've got just over 74,000 positions open through all of those soccer programs. So there are a lot of opportunities, but throughout the overall U.S., the amount of people that play soccer, there really isn't a lot.
And again, something that we have mentioned, you just mentioned throughout the U.S., but these coaches are also recruiting international players.
Yes.
They're also looking at, people to come in from overseas to compete for roster spots.
Yeah. Let's dig a little bit deeper into the specific divisions here and what they can provide and what you're looking at. So I'm going to take a Division One.
Sure.
We all know about this. It is the highest level of athletic competition. Your blue chip players are going to be there. Your top-notch international players are going to be there. And most of these players are probably coming out of the ECNL. And a small portion of these kids are probably moving on to the pro levels. The other thing about Division I, they have the largest athletic budgets. I mean, you're talking about massive donors throwing money. We all see their athletic facilities named after one person.
Right.
Well, you understand what that money's coming from. So massive amounts of money to spend on fields, uniforms, travel, food, whatever it may be. The other thing to think about Division I is you're dealing with a very large campus and probably enormous class sizes. So if you are pretty comfortable handling your academics on your own and you can deal with a large class where you're not going to get that one-on-one opportunity with your professor, that's probably okay. But if you need that one-on-one time, if you need a tutor, you might want to look at some of those smaller divisions. In Division I, some of the programs that you want to look at from the men's side, You have Stanford University, University of North Carolina, University of California, Virginia. There's Harvard, Michigan. The big names we already know
absolutely.
are going to be out there. And on the women's side, you're looking at some, University of North Carolinas. You've got your Stanfords. You've got your Harvards and your Yales and your Princetons. Typically the same thing as the men's.
Yeah.
Very similar to the men's and women's here. So Division I, large classes, large campus, large budgets, high level of competition. It is the blue chip level.
Yeah, and I think something to note with Division I, and kind of leads us into our Division II discussion, is in Division I, just like you see in a lot of the other sports, you kind of have the cream of the crop, and then kind of everybody else. Maybe you have a Cinderella every now and then. Things like that. The University of Kentucky men's soccer program was really solid last season. So every now and then you have one of those teams kind of insert themselves. But for the most part, as you mentioned, it is the Stanfords, it is the North Carolinas, and things like that. Where in Division II, you get a little more balance across from top to bottom. Now, that's not to say that you don't have your top level teams who are always competing for a championship, and your lower level teams who are always just struggling for draws. But for the most part, you're going to have those strong athletics. The competition in Division II is still really, really good.
And the reasoning behind that is some of those players who are blue chip, maybe they didn't get the scholarship at the school that they wanted. And now they're deciding to go to Division II for maybe it's closer. Maybe it's because of the class size. Maybe they don't want to go to a large campus. And so some of those D1 players are rolling down to Division II, and they're creating that balance of a small gap of different talent levels there.
Yeah, and I just did some real quick math. If we go back to the average roster size of 29 at Division I, I'm just doing the men's side of things real quickly, with 207 programs. That is 6,000 athletes. So again, if you go back to that number of 35,000 people playing college soccer, that's, about a sixth of these athletes are going to play college soccer. So that leaves, 5/6 of the college soccer world who are going to fall into these other divisions. Division II, this is one of those instances where if playing time is important to you, and I don't want to sit and learn, I don't want to sit and develop, I want to play. Division II is a place where you are more likely to see some playing time as a sophomore, maybe even a freshman, depending on your talent level. So if that's your thing, if that's important to you, if that's one of your criteria that you have made when you sat down and listed out your recruiting criteria, then maybe Division II is where you start looking. And also, you're going to get, now not all of these schools are small, but you're going to get into some smaller campuses, some smaller class sizes, nothing like you're going to see in some of the later divisions, but definitely not as large as in Division I.
Absolutely. And looking at some of those programs for Division II, we're looking at, again, University of California, but this is in San Diego, Western Washington, Bentley, Colorado, Rollins College. So schools maybe you haven't really heard of,
right?
But they're out there, and I guarantee you, there's plenty around you that you may not be aware of. On the women's side, you've got Grand Valley State, Western Washington, again Rollins University, Point Loma. They're out there. You just got to do your research.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, moving on to Division III. Again, we mentioned this before, no athletic scholarships. That's very important to remember here. So if you need a scholarship, maybe look into some financial aid. Maybe your grades can get you an academic scholarship to go to these schools. The important thing to remember here is it's one of the most balanced of division levels as far as competition goes. You're going to have more schools that have similar talent on their teams, filling out their rosters. I don't see as many international players coming to Division III because of no athletic scholarships. Schools you can look at, Johns Hopkins, Erica Suter, one of our previous guests here, went there. Emory University, University of Chicago, Carnegie Mellon University. Again, I guarantee you there's a Division III school somewhere around you. You just got to do your research. And on the women's side, you've got Johns Hopkins, Amherst College, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. That's for the smart people. But they love to play sports as well. So,
yeah, and what you kind of notice, and not what you kind of notice, we've already mentioned it. It's fact that at Division III, the competition is a little more spread out. It's a little more level, and I don't know. To me, that's important. Maybe if I was a top-notch soccer player, that wouldn't be important to me. But I don't know. I like playing games that when we kick off, I'm not sure who's going to win. And I know that it's going to take everything in my ability, my team's ability, my coach's ability for us to get a win. And we're not playing games that are, 5, 6, 7-0. But we're playing the fun, tightly contested soccer.
absolutely. What you look at NAIA here.
Yeah, so the NAIA is small campus, small class sizes. You're really starting to get into those more personable campuses and professors and things like that. The big change here is the flexibility in recruiting that they have.
That's huge.
We've talked to Tripp and Don and even Eric had talked a little bit about it, and even some of our athletes spoke about it, where the NCAA, which is Division I, Division II, Division III, have so many rules and regulations that these coaches have to abide by. We talk, you're going to send coaches emails as a freshman or as an eighth grader, and they're not going to respond to you because they can't.
Yeah.
It's not that way in AIA. They can. There's no calendar. So they can recruit you whenever they'd like, whether it's in season, off season, whatever it is. So a little more flexibility in that recruitment in the NAIA ranks. And then, you have a little more balance. It's not all soccer all the time at these schools like it is in the NCAA ranks, where we talk about soccer being a full-time job. Get a little more of a balance starting in the NAIA with athletics, academics, and maybe even a social life a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's important to remember there. We're going to these schools for a career. I mean, if you have aspirations to play pros and you need to be in Division I, Division II to get those opportunities. So, that balance there is very important, because Division I, that is a full-time job.
And I don't think it's much different in Division II and Division III. I mean, I still think, that would be a great question for us to ask Erica, at John Hopkins. Does it still feel like a full-time job, even at that Division III level? Because I would imagine it would.
Absolutely. Moving on to junior college, we don't see a lot of people going to these schools, but great opportunity here. The biggest thing is the cost of their tuition. Yeah. It's going to be significantly reduced, and you have academic opportunities to improve your GPA maybe. Maybe get rid of some of your gen ed classes before you figure out what major you want to get into. And once you get that GPA up, you know what you want to do, maybe then you can go on to Division I, Division II, right, if that opportunity is available there. And it's another opportunity to have your athletic abilities developed a little bit more. Maybe you weren't looked at in either of the divisions. Maybe go to a junior college and develop a little bit. Just like we said, they have small rosters. You are going to get playing time. Yeah. And like we said, get some of those classes out of the way, build yourself up. Some of the junior colleges on the men's side, you've got Monroe College, Daytona State, Iowa Western University, Arizona Western, schools we've never heard of, but again, they're available out there. And on the women's side, you've got Seminole State, Butler Community College, Eastern Florida State, Iowa Western, Salt Lake. Again, I guarantee you, if you do your research, you have schools within a few hours in all of these divisions to look into, and 74,000 open opportunities throughout all of the United States. You just got to get through and do your research.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with we didn't mention some of the programs in the NAIA, but I think this is interesting because I think a lot of these NAIA programs are ones that you have heard of before. You have Robert Morris, you have Asbury, where John Gordon is currently playing, Bethel University, places like that. On both sides, you also have kind of the branches like the University of Michigan in Dearborn,
Right.
Indiana Wesleyan University, places like that. So again, lots and lots of opportunities, as you mentioned. You know, there is soccer out there. You know, we heard Don mention that some of these, especially at the Division III NAIA rank, some of these teams are folding because they can't field a team.
Right.
So it's going to take some work on the recruits' part, as we've talked about throughout this series. But there are opportunities there, and you have to be proactive. You have to be a good communicator, and you have to be willing to kind of put yourself out there to get, I mean, maybe even be like a little annoying to get these coaches to say, okay, let's go watch him play.
Well, this is going to conclude our recruiting series. We hope you have learned quite a bit of information just along with us. We have learned more than enough information here. I think the biggest thing is communication. Do your homework. Be mature about it. Things we've said over and over again.
Big thank you to everybody who came on, was a part of this first series for us. So big thank you to those people.
This is the ACE Football Academy. We'll catch you again in the next series. Have a good day.